Good morning, student. Now we'll start with our third lecture under this module 5. Just confirm whether you can see the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So in the last class, we have seen Java MapReduce program, how to write the mapper and reducer classes and pack it into a job. Is there any issue? Okay, so in the last class, we have seen how to write the map function and reduce function under the mapper classes, under the mapper class and reduce class in order to assign some task, what has to be done in the map phase and what has to be done in the reduce phase, and pack them together into a job so that you can create an archive file out of the job by using set Java archive. So in order to make a job deployable on HDFS cluster, we need to convert a job into an archive file. So we create a job instance, convert it into an archive file, and then deploy it onto HDFS cluster so that it can be handed over to various data nodes in order to perform the processing task. Today we are going to cover on how to scale out this. We have written the mapper and reducer classes at a smaller scale, and now how to scale it out so that it can be run on larger HDFS cluster. So this is the MapReduce. This is the MapReduce program we have seen yesterday. So in this case, I'll just give you a quick recap on this. If at all anybody have missed, we have created one mapper class by the name max temperature mapper, which will override the map function that is already existing in the mapper superclass, right? And we also understood that every map phase and reduce phase will take the values in the form of key and value. So the input to a map phase as well as the output of the map phase will be in the form of key value pairs. Again, the key value pair emitted as output by the map phase will be taken as input by the reduce phase. And that will further give key value pairs as output, and many such reduce tasks under the MapReduce framework will give multiple key value pairs as outputs, and all those key value pairs will be consolidated to give a comprehensive result to the client. Okay, that is the essence of any MapReduce framework. For that, we have to write our customized map function and reduce function. We already have a mapper class, a mapper superclass under this package, org apache hadoop.mapreduce.mapper. So under this class, we have the map function, and that map function can be overridden by any classes that extend this mapper class. So we can customize our code into this map function, and according to our requirement, that map function will execute our job in order to give the input to the reduce phase. In the same way, here we have a reducer class also, which is extended, which our customized class will extend. So our class here is max temperature reducer, which will extend the reducer superclass that is existing in org.apache.hadoop.mapreduce packages reducer class. Okay, from this superclass, we are extending into our customizable class, which will override the reduce function that is already declared in the reducer class. So this reduce function, through this reduce function, we will be able to write our customized code again in order to sort and consolidate the final outputs. Now, once our mapper class and reducer classes are ready, we create a new job instance, create a Java archive file from our main class max temperature. We have created a main class max temperature. So that main class's .class file have to be created as a Java archive file and packed into the job. So we need this Java archive file in order to easily deploy this job onto HDFS cluster, right? So we are packing this Java archive file along with the job's name in order to uniquely identify the job, and a file input path in order to read the data to be processed. From a file, you need to read the data to be processed, right? That input path has to be given, and the output path to a file where the result of the MapReduce job have to be written, and you have to pass this job a mapper class, because that has your customized code in order to perform the MapReduce task, right? So you have to pass the mapper class, you have to pass the reducer class. How do you do that? How do you set the mapper and reducer classes? By taking the dot class file of the mapper class you have written and the dot class file of the reducer class you have written, set those to the job, pack it into a job, and finally set the type of key value pairs that can be emitted by this MapReduce framework as an output. So for that, you are setting for the key a text type, means a string type which indicates the year in which the air temperature is captured, and you are setting for the value int writable. So the key has the year and the value has an integer value. Int writable is Hadoop's integer. Okay, in Java you have integer data type. Analogous to that, in Hadoop you have int writable as the data type for integers. Now in this case, for value, it represents a numeric value because that is the air temperature, say 111 degrees or minus 11 degrees or 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, this is the air temperature that is recorded. Finally, by the end of this MapReduce task, our objective is to get the maximum air temperature recorded in each year, and this you are performing for 100 years. But when we are writing the mapper class and the reducer class, we are doing it at a smaller scale just by taking smaller input splits. But once your job is ready, you deploy it onto HDFS cluster to be executed at a larger scale. Okay, now in this case, the key value is set and the values data type is also set. Finally, the job is packed with all the essential details, and you call the wait for completion method on the job instance. Now on this job instance, you're calling wait for completion method, and as long as it is waiting, it will give 0 as the value, and once the task is completed, it will return 1 as the value. Now when it returns 1, that 1 is supplied to this exit method of system class, and it will exit the execution of this job. That is how we complete the job execution of a particular processing task. Did you understand this? Students, did you understand how to write a mapper class, reducer class, and how to pack it into a job? If you have any doubts, you can ask me to repeat it once again. Maybe other students also have the doubt, but may not be able to express that. So if you tell me to repeat, I'll repeat this. Otherwise, I'll proceed to the next topic. Akrut, Abhilash, did you understand this?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now let's go to the next topic, scaling out. How to scale out this? We have written the mapper class and reducer classes to execute the job at a smaller scale. But how to scale it out so that it can execute on a HDFS cluster while processing large amounts of data? You know the scale of data in NCDC dataset, right? You have around 100 years data in the NCDC dataset, National Climatic Data Centers dataset. It has 100 years data, and every year it contains meteorological measurements, weather, climatic parameter measurements, climatic attribute measurements, measured at hundreds of weather stations by deploying the sensors there. Now such data is captured for each year, and 100 years of such data is available for you to process and obtain the result of what is the maximum temperature recorded in each year over 100 years. So you can imagine the scale of data that we have to be processed in order to get our final result. Yes, do you have any doubt? Somebody is trying to ask something? Okay, so we are trying to now scale out our task into a larger scale to get it executed on HDFS cluster. So to allow Hadoop to move the MapReduce computation to each machine hosting a part of the data, the process is as follows. We understood that MapReduce framework provides data locality optimization. Because of this data locality optimization, you are not moving the data anywhere. You are moving the computation to the nodes where the data resides. Okay, that is the basic essence of the MapReduce task. Now, to allow Hadoop to move the MapReduce computation to each machine hosting a part of the data, you already know that the data set is fragmented and distributed onto various data nodes. Now, in order to process that data existing on various data nodes, you have to pass the computation to all the data nodes, right? So if you have a file, if you have a data set, this data set is fragmented and distributed onto multiple data nodes, right? Now, these multiple data nodes have the fragments of the data set, and you have to pass the computation to all these data nodes in order to perform the execution, get the results out of these data nodes, and combine all those results into a single consolidated result. Now, the MapReduce framework is responsible to perform this entire task. Now, to allow our Hadoop to move the MapReduce computation to each of these machines hosting the data, the process is as follows, means what I'm going to discuss right now. Now, a MapReduce job is a unit of work that the client wants to be performed. Yes, it consists of the input data, the input splits, the MapReduce program, what we have written in Java, mapper class, reducer class, and the job, the mechanism to pack them into a job, and the configuration information. Configuration information contains on which data nodes it should be run and how compatible are the data nodes in order to run the task. Now, the Hadoop runs the job by dividing it into multiple tasks, of which there are two types. So what are those tasks? The map task and the reduce task. Now, there are two types of nodes that control the job execution process. So what are the two types of nodes? The job tracker and the task tracker. I already explained you about the Hadoop daemons that should be running on a HDFS cluster in order to execute a MapReduce framework. Now, what are those daemons? Do you remember? Can anyone list out those Hadoop daemons that should be up and running in order to execute a MapReduce task on HDFS cluster? Can anyone name those 5 Hadoop daemons? You already have 2 in front of you. So other 3 you have to mention.
Name node, data node.
Yes. Who is that?
Raman.
Raman, yes. Name node, data node.
Secondary name node.
Very good.
Resource manager and node manager.
No. Job tracker and task tracker. Resource manager, it doesn't come here. It comes in Yarn. Okay. So the Hadoop daemons that should be up and running are name node, secondary name node, data node, job tracker, and task tracker. Right. So in order to execute or in order to control the job execution process, you need to have 2 types of data nodes. Means data node should be ready to perform 2 types of responsibilities. One is to execute the job tracker, and the other one is to take up the responsibility of job tracker, and the other one is to perform the responsibility of task tracker. So you should have, the HDFS cluster should have in hand a job tracker and number of task trackers. So the job tracker coordinates all the jobs run on the system by scheduling the tasks to run on the task tracker. So the main functionality of the job tracker is to coordinate between all the jobs run on the system by scheduling the tasks to run on the task tracker. Say if a file is divided into 10 different fragments and distributed onto 10 data nodes. Now the job tracker will be responsible to pass the computation onto these 10 data nodes by making them as the task nodes. Now the job tracker will take care of running the jobs on the task trackers. The task trackers run the tasks, means the data nodes, actually where the file 10 parts are residing. So these task trackers, the data nodes, which are also called as the task trackers, run the tasks and send progress reports to the job tracker, indicating that this job has been run up to this extent. Means the job tracker will be responsible to monitor the progress of the tasks on these task trackers. So these task trackers will send the progress reports to the job tracker, which keeps a record of all the overall progress of the job. Each job, means one job execution is divided into 10 sub jobs now. So the 10 task trackers will be running the 10 tasks simultaneously, and every time they send the progress report, at frequent intervals, the task trackers will send the progress reports to the job tracker so that the job tracker will easily track the overall progress of the job. This will be clearly understood when we understand the interface that is provided by the MapReduce on a HDFS cluster. We will be able to see what is the progress of each of the map tasks. So once all the map task executions are completed, or at least 50% of the map task execution is completed, then only the reduce task will start its process. Otherwise, it will not have output from the reduce task, right? So the map task progress will be tracked, will be monitored by this job tracker. The individual data nodes which execute the actual task are called as task trackers, and they report their progress of the job execution at frequent intervals to the job tracker in order to make it track the overall progress of the job. Now, if a task fails, in the middle, if at all a task node fails due to some system failure or due to some disk failure, if a task fails, the job tracker can reschedule it on a different task tracker. That is the magic of MapReduce framework. That is how the MapReduce framework is it is fault tolerant. The MapReduce frameworks are fault tolerant and at the same time reliable enough to handle any system failures or disk failures. Okay, so if a task fails, the job tracker can reschedule this task on this data node onto a different data node, onto a different task tracker in order to execute the entire job without any interruption. Now, Hadoop divides the input to a MapReduce job into fixed sized pieces called input splits, or just we can call them as splits. Now, why we want them to be equal sized? Why input split should be equal sized? Can anyone guess on this? I already gave you a hint about this in the previous classes. When we are dividing the largest data set into smaller input splits in order to perform the processing, why we need to take care that they are split into equal sized chunks?
So that every nodes can work properly, and if the input size is smaller for some nodes, it will sit idle for the next entire work.
Very good. If the input splits are smaller, then the job execution will be completed faster and the nodes will sit idle. while the other task trackers are completely busy executing the job. This indicates that this gives a view to the client that some of the jobs are completed and the result is available, and other jobs are still delaying, means other map tasks are still delaying, means the client may get a doubt that whether any interruption has happened with those jobs or with those tasks. Okay, so in order to avoid that kind of misconceptions, it is always better to divide the input splits into fixed sized chunks. Now Hadoop creates one map task for each split, which runs the user defined map function for each record in the split. Very clear task that it is performing, right? Each input split is mapped onto one map task that runs on one single data node. Again, the second input split mapped as a single map task will run on the second data node, and so on, right? Which runs on user defined map function. We have defined the mapper class, right? We have defined a map function in the mapper class. So Hadoop creates one map task for each input split, which runs on the user defined map function for each record in the split. Now, having many splits means the time taken to process each split is small compared to the time to process the whole input, right? This is again the divide and conquer approach. Rather than executing or processing the entire larger input split, larger data set, we can divide it into smaller input split and execute them simultaneously and finally consolidate the result. That will make the processing task faster. Now, if we are processing the splits in parallel, the processing is better load balanced when the splits are small, since a faster machine will be able to process proportionally more splits over the course of the job than a slower machine. So if the input splits are small and if they are executed in parallel, you can assign multiple map tasks to a data node so that they can run multiple processing tasks, multiple jobs at the same time to quickly give you the processing results. Now, if the machines are identical, failed process or other jobs running concurrently make load balancing desirable. So if the machines are identical and they are running, processing the input splits, then concurrently the load balancing is desirable, and the quality of the load balancing increases as the splits become more and more fine-grained. So as the input splits are smaller and smaller, you can achieve better and better load balancing. Okay, so it is inversely proportional. As you go on making the input split smaller and smaller, the load balancing that is achieved is better and better. But you have to stop this fine graining of input splits at some extent. Means you can't make the input splits too small. So where should you stop? On the other hand, why this issue arises, let us see. On the other hand, if input splits are too small, the overhead of managing the splits and of map task creation begins to dominate the total job execution time. Again, everywhere there will be a trade-off. If we say, if we ask you to do something, do it in a better manner, but not at the cost of consuming your time or not at the cost of consuming more resources. That is what we generally say, right? So in this case, you can go on splitting the input, you can go on dividing the data set into smaller input split to achieve better load balancing. But how smaller should be the input splits? As you keep on making the input splits smaller and smaller, you come out with large number of input splits, and managing the input splits and creating the map tasks will actually start dominating the actual job execution time. So you have to decide what should be the best suitable input split in order to achieve the load balancing on one hand, and at the same time it doesn't dominate the total job execution. For that, what we have to do, how should we decide on a good input split size? For most jobs, a good split size tends to be the size of an HDFS block. So what is the default size of HDFS block? Same can be decided as the input split size also. So it should be 64 MB by default, although this can be changed by the, although it can be changed for the cluster for all newly created files or specified when each file is created. You know that HDFS default size, block size can be changed, though its default size is 64 MB, right? So this 64 MB can also be chosen as the input split size of the data set. Okay, so when you decide this as the input split, that could be ideal in order to achieve better load balancing while dividing the data set into input splits. Now, Hadoop does its best to run the map task on a node where the input data resides in HDFS. So the Hadoop's main intention is to run the map task on a data node where the data actual input split resides, where the fragment of the data set resides. Hadoop tries to co-locate the map task onto the data node where the input data is residing. Now this is called as the data locality optimization, the important keyword that should be seen in your answers, the data locality optimization. Due to this data locality optimization, the MapReduce framework is able to achieve better bandwidth speeds, means you need not transfer the data to and fro by encountering network congestion or network bottlenecks. You are just passing the computation, and Hadoop takes care of co-locating the computation onto the data nodes where the actual data is residing. This concept is called as data locality optimization because it doesn't use valuable cluster bandwidth. And sometimes, however, all three nodes hosting the HDFS block replicas for a map task input split are running other map tasks. So the job scheduler will look for a free map slot on a node in the same rack as on the blocks. Say, a computation or a map task along with the computation is now being sent to a data node to execute on that fragment of the data set. Now, if the data node is already busy executing other map tasks, then it may not be able to take up this new map task that is being assigned by the Hadoop platform. So what is the alternative? It checks for a different data node having the replicated copy of that fragment of data set and tries to assign the map task to that data node. Now, even that data node is also busy, then it will try to find out another data node having the third copy, having the third replica of that data set fragment and sends the map task to that data node, assigns the map task to that data node to execute the task. So this much of mechanism is followed by MapReduce task in order to execute the task in quick amount of time, right? So very occasionally, even if this is not possible, then an off-rack node is used, which results in the inter-rack network transfer. Okay, on the same node, on the same rack, the data node is not available. Now in the same, on the same, yes, on the same rack, if the data node is not rack, the data node is not free, so it locates another data node on a different rack in order to assign the map task. So it is transferring the computation from this node to another rack where the data node is free to take up the map task. So for this, it requires an inter-rack network transfer. It requires an off-rack network transfer. So when compared to the bandwidth utilization where the entire data is being transferred, Here the computations inter-rack transfer is not a nominal amount of transfer. So we can compromise with this in extreme cases when the data nodes on the same racks are not available to take up the map task. Now that is explained with this diagram. So you can see here the map task here is being executed on a data node. The map task is now ready to be executed on a data node where the HDFS block is residing. Now, if this HDFS block finds that the map task can be assigned to the data node because the data node is busy executing other map jobs, then it will try to find another data node where it is free to take up the map job on a different rack. So this can be taken as rack. This is rack 1, this is rack 2, and this is rack 3. Okay, so it will check whether a data node is available to execute the map task on the same rack. If it is not available, then it will check for a different rack data node where it is free to take up the map task. Now, even here it is not free, then it will go to the third rack where third replica copy is available for this fragmented data block, and it will see whether that data node is free to take up the map task and executes the map task. So this is extreme case. Actually, without any inter-rack network transfer itself, the job can be executed. But in rare cases, if at all it is busy with many map jobs, then it can go to the second rack or the third rack in order to see the data node that is available with the data copy and free of map task, so that the map task can be taken up and the processing can be completed. Now it should now be clear why the optimal split size is the same as the block size. It is the largest size of input that can be guaranteed to be stored on a single data node, so that it can execute the entire map, it can execute the entire processing task on that one single input split. If the block size is also partitioned, then it has to access two data nodes in order to execute one block of data. In order to perform the computation on one block of data, if the block is split onto two data nodes, it has to search for two data nodes to execute the map task. That is why it is always advisable to keep the optimal input size as the block size, so that the map task can be executed on a single data node to confirm the completion of execution. Now, if the split spanned two blocks, it would be unlikely to any HDFS node stored both blocks. So some of the split would have to be transferred across the network to the node running the map task, which is clearly less efficient than running the old task using local data. Right? That is what we have discussed. Rather than running it on a single data node having the entire block of data, if the block is split onto two different data nodes, you have to utilize the bandwidth again in order to bring that part of the block onto this data node which is executing the map task. So that will again utilize the network bandwidth, the cluster bandwidth, which is again the performance degradation with respect to MapReduce framework. That is why you should take care that the input splits should be of the same size as the HDFS blocks. You should take care, you should optimize in such a manner that the input split should be of the HDFS block size. Now map tasks write their output to the local disk, not to HDFS, because map output is intermediate output. Now, when we have a map job which passes the input, which passes the output to a reduced job, and reduced job finally writes the data to a file. Now, whenever the map job's output is being passed to the reduced job as input, this is intermediate data, intermediate result. The intermediate result of map job being passed as input to the reduced job need not be saved anywhere, because once the reduced task executes and completes its task, the map jobs output have to be disposed. Actually, it is not required because the reduced task already works on the input and gives a consolidated result into a file. That is why the intermediate output of the map task has to be disposed. It need not be written anywhere. So for time being, it will write the map tasks output to a local disk. Okay, so until the reduced job takes the input from the map job, that map job's output is written to a local disk temporarily. So once the reduced job completes its execution, this data on the local disk can be disposed. That is what we are mentioning here. Map tasks write their output to the local disk, not to HDFS cluster directly, because map output is intermediate output. So it is processed by reduced tasks to produce the final output, and once the job is complete, the map output can be thrown away. So storing it in HDFS with replication factor would be an overkill. It would be an overhead to the HDFS cluster. And there is also no meaning in actually storing this intermediate results. Now, if the node running the map task fails before the map output has been consumed by the reduced task, then Hadoop will automatically rerun the map task on another node to recreate the map output. Okay, now you may get a doubt that while the map task is writing its output to a local disk temporarily, and if at all the node running the map task fails before the output has been consumed by the reduced phase, then what will happen? No problem. Hadoop will automatically rerun the map task once again to generate the same output in order to hand it over to the reduced task. Now, reduced tasks don't have the advantage of data locality. Yes, because the data locality optimization is actually the significant concept that is executed, performed only in the map task. But reduced task doesn't have the comfort of this data locality optimization. The input to the single reduced task is normally the output from all the mappers, right? So to a single map reduced task, if you have to give the output, that output can come from multiple reduced tasks, multiple map tasks. Now in the present example, we have a single reduced task that is fed by all the map tasks. In this case, you can see that there is a single reduced task which is being fed by all the map tasks here. Did you notice this? So we can have various combinations. We can have map reduce framework with a single reduced task. We can have map reduce framework with multiple reduced tasks, or we can have it without having any reduced task at all. So that depends on the application requirements. Now in this case, the sorted map outputs have to be transferred across the network to the node where the reduced task is running. So where the map tasks run? On data nodes. Where the reduced tasks run? Again on the data nodes only. These are all called as task trackers, which will indicate their progress of job execution to the job tracker. Again, job tracker is also a data node which monitors the progress of the job execution. Now, now the sorted map outputs have to be transferred across the network to the node where the reduced task is running, where they are merged and then passed to the user-defined reduced task, user-defined reduce function. You have defined already by writing a Java code for the reduce function under reducer class, max temperature reducer. Do you remember? Now that has a reduce function which will take the output of the map task and perform its execution. Now the output of the reduce is normally stored in HDFS for reliability. The reduced task's output is stored on the HDFS cluster by writing it to a file, and it also maintains the replicas of the reduced task output. Means minimum 3 copies of the reduced task output will be maintained on HDFS cluster in order to achieve reliability. Now for each HDFS block of the reduce output, the first replica is stored on the local node with other replicas being stored on off-rack nodes. Again, the same strategy is being followed here also. While writing the reduce task output, first it writes the output to a local data node, then it writes the output to off-rack data nodes, means data nodes on different racks. Thus, writing the reduced output does consume network bandwidth. It has to consume network bandwidth because on the same data node, if it has to write the reduced output, it doesn't consume any network bandwidth. But when it is creating the replicas of the reduced output on off-rack data nodes, it has to transfer the reduced output to different racks. For that, it consumes network bandwidth. This is inevitable. We can't avoid this at all, because you have to maintain the replication factor even for the reduced task output. Okay, so it consumes network bandwidth, but only as much as a normal HDFS write pipeline consumes. That is the best part of this MapReduce framework. It consumes only as much as a HDFS write pipeline consumes, because it is not writing the entire data set. It is writing the consolidated result much more smaller when compared to the entire data set, right? The final processed result is much, much smaller than the entire initial data set. So it consumes only normal HDFS write pipelines extent of consumption of this bandwidth. Now, if a MapReduce data flow uses a single reduce task, how does it look like? See here, an input split is being assigned to a data node as a map job, and input split 1, input splits 2 are being assigned to data node 1 to run a map job 1, data node 2 to run the map job 2, and data node 3 to run the third map job. Now, all these will give their intermediate outputs, key value pairs, which will serve as input to the reduce phase. Now, we can have a sub-level here in order to merge the inputs, in order to merge the outputs of all these map jobs, and that merged result can be given as input to the reduce phase, because we are having a single reduce task here. If we are having multiple reduced tasks, then we can have number of as many number of reduced tasks as the number of map tasks, if we have multiple reduced jobs. But here we are having a single reduced task. That is why all the map jobs output are merged into a single input and passed on to the reduced job in order to get the final output, which should be written onto a file on HDFS cluster, and at the same time replication also have to be maintained. Means the output of the reduce phase have to be maintained in 3 copies in order to maintain the replication factor, default replication factor 3. Means it will be written onto 3 different files on HDFS cluster. Now, the number of reduced tasks is not governed by the size of the input, but instead is specified independently. Okay, the number of reduced tasks we decide for every map reduce job cannot be governed, need not be governed by the size of the input, but instead it is specified independently. We can specify it independently. When there are multiple reducers, when we use multiple reducers, the map task partition their output, each creating one partition for one reduced task. That I have told you already. If you have 3 map tasks, then all these map tasks, map 1, map 2, and map 3, will emit outputs which will serve as inputs to 3 reduced tasks. Right? In this case, you need not include any merging task in the intermediate level. All the map tasks, multiple map tasks will supply their outputs to the multiple reduced tasks. Now, there can be many keys in each partition, but the records for any given key are all in a single partition. So if you have, though you have multiple keys, their associated values in each partition will have the records for any given key will all be in the same partition. It will ensure that all records, the given key are all in the single partition for the records. Now the partitioning can be controlled by a user-defined partitioning function, but normally the default partitioner, which buckets the keys using a hash function works very well, right? So the partitioning also here can be controlled by user-defined partitioning function. We can write a partitioning function, but generally the default partitioning function is the best one because it uses bucket keys using a hash function, which actually works well than any customized functions. Now, in this case, you can see multiple reduced tasks being used. In this case, map functions, first map function, second map function, and the third map task, all these data, all these key value pairs are shuffled and merged so that they can be fed as input to multiple reduced phase. Here, it is not that all should be consolidated into a single input to the reduced phase, but we have the comfort of multiple reduced phases here. So you can give multiple inputs to the reduced task, which emit their individual reduced results. Now, though they are individual reduced results, still they have to be written onto HDFS cluster files by maintaining the replication factor 3, so that it will finally consolidate all those results and gives the final comprehensive result. This is to achieve reliability again. If at all one copy fails, still the reduced phases outputs will be available on the other copies. This is how the reliability is achieved by even writing the parts of reduced outputs onto HDFS cluster files and maintaining the replication factor for each of those parts of the reduced outputs. Now this diagram makes it clear why the data flow between map and reduced task is colloquially known as the shuffle, as each reduced task is fed by many map tasks. So in order to feed this reduced task, the output is obtained from many reduced tasks. Again, to feed this reduced phase, it is getting the output from many reduced tasks. That is why the output have to be shuffled and merged so that it serves as a single key value to each reduced task. Now the shuffle is more complicated than the diagram. Actually, the diagram depicts it in a simple manner, but the actual shuffle task will be very complicated when it is being run on a larger scale, and tuning it can have a big impact on job execution time. So if we are able to tune it, better will be the job execution time. You will get the job execution done much faster. Now, finally, it is also possible to have zero reduced tasks. This can be appropriate when you don't need the shuffle because the processing can be carried out entirely in parallel. So you can omit the reduced phase altogether in some cases. In this case, the only off-node transfer is when the map tasks write to the HDFS cluster. So I'll explain you with the figure here. Now in this case, this map job 1, map 2 and map 3 are writing their part results directly onto a file on HDFS cluster by maintaining the replication factor also. Here, no involvement of reduced task exists. Here the application has decided, or the client has decided, to execute the map job without the involvement of any reduced task. So it will take care of writing the map reduces outputs not to a local disk, but directly to a file on HDFS cluster. Understand this carefully. The map job is not writing the output of the map job to any local disk as temporary file, but it is writing this map job's output directly onto a file on HDFS cluster by maintaining the replication factor in order to achieve reliability in the absence of reduced tasks. Now, in the next coming sessions, we'll see what is the role of combiner function in order to optimize this map reduce job execution and how to write a combiner function. Students, do you have any doubts in today's topic?
No, ma'am.
Did you understand it well?
Yes,
Kishan? Hemlata? Okay. Sri Vishnu? Kishan?
Yes, ma'am.
Soumya?
Yes.
Right. Okay, before closing, let me take the attendance.